will never forget us. We have the hope of remembering who we really are. Amen? Oh, we're gonna say that again because I don't think you believe it. Because God, what? Because God will never forget us. Let's say it together. We have the hope of remembering who we really are. You know, the fact is human beings are forgetful. You're forgetful. I'm forgetful. We are all forgetful. You don't think I'm telling the truth? Okay. How many of you have ever gone into Costco? Or Costco? How many of you have walked into Costco, you go around, you shop, and then you go outside, and as you're outside, you're walking around and you're looking for where you parked. And you walk up to someone's vehicle, and you start opening up that vehicle, and then someone comes up like, hey, why are you trying to break into my car? And you realize that's not your car. It's so easy for us to, okay, maybe that's just me. Or have you ever walked into, so you're in one room of your house, you leave that room and you walk into the next room looking for something and you forget what you came into that room for. You're like spinning around like, what is it? What am I here for? Okay, that's just me. Or maybe you're like me in the sense that, my wife was like, yo, babe, I need you to go to the grocery store and get these items. And she's like, I think you should write it down. I'm like, come on. I don't need to write it down. I'm not going to forget it. And I go in the store, and I buy all the items, and I come home, and I'm like, see, I got everything. She's like, no, you didn't. You forget the one important item for dinner tonight, right? See, as human beings, it's easy for us to forget. We forget where we place our keys. We forget to say please. We forget where we place the remote. We forget the importance of the vote. We forget important dates. We even forget how certain equipment operates. We forget faces, and we also forget places. We forget mail, and we forget important detail. It is easy for us to forget. Do I have a witness? Oh, just a few. Okay. See, one of the things is that we will see is that memory is one of the most important yet fragile things about us. Our memory is important, but yet it is fragile. The fact is, forgetfulness hurts. Forgetfulness hurts. What do you mean, Pastor Greg? See, chances are all of us have been forgotten at some point in our lives. Yes, we know the pain of expecting someone to remember. We expect someone to remember to show up to our game or to our performance. We expect someone to remember to call us or write us. We expect someone to remember to make time for us. And if you can think back, some of the greatest disappointments in our relationships are made in the moments our memories fail us. See, imagine if you should forget your children's or your child's birthday. Great disappointment. Imagine if you should come home and the whole day you didn't say happy anniversary because you simply forgot that it was your anniversary. That never happened to me. But imagine if you were also the last child left at school because your parent or one of the parents forgot that it was their day to pick you up. It could lead to a great disappointment. And so oftentimes we say we forget because we've got too much on our mind. Too much on our mind. And so, I wanted to know how much data can our mind actually hold? Before I show you, how much data do you think our mind can actually hold? Okay, no one wants to guess. Go ahead. How much? Enough? What's enough? Give me a number. What?
What are the units?
Okay, give me in like a computer. Think of your brain like a computer. How much storage can your brain, Max?
Half a terabyte.
Ooh, half a terabyte. That's a very good guess. What are you thinking? 3 terabytes. Guess what they say? So computational neuroscientists, they say that your brain can hold somewhere between 10 terabytes to 100 on the small scale. But it can go anywhere from 1 terabyte to 2.5 petabytes. Exactly. All right, so you know, I used to be in the corporate world. And I'm going to try to help you understand you're making sense of data. Right? So 1 gigabyte, consider this as a page, right? And you can see here, there's some breakdowns of the different types of documents you can have. We're going to just think this is a regular text document. 1 gigabyte is equal to 677,000, almost 678,000 pages. Can you imagine 678,000 pages of information? That's just 1 gigabyte.
Is it front and back?
Just no, front, right? Man. But hear me now. A terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes, right? And they're saying it's actually 2.5 petabytes. So you're talking about your brain can hold the capacity of almost 677 billion pages. So I can understand when people say I have a lot on my mind. I can understand, right? Like, how can you remember? How can you remember? There is the potential for us to forget. But then, you know, this guy, his name is Anthony Mittervere. He came up with 21 memory retrieval methods. 21. And I've highlighted some of them. There's chunking, which is like grouping information. There is exercising. There is mnemonics. Everybody knows EGDBF, right? What does that stand for? Musicians? Okay, someone said it. Every good boy does fine. Am I the only one who was in learning music and they told you that acronym, every good boy deserves favor, does fine? Okay, whatever. So you can also pay attention or pay more attention. Now, one of the things that I've learned, I was sharing this with Toby last week, that it's important to do brain breaks. Now, brain breaks is like because your mind can get so overloaded, what you want to do every 20 minutes, you want to do these exercises that allows your brain to cross over each other. And you'll actually be able to retain information more readily. And then you also have positive thinking. I'm telling you right now, my sister is one of those that I'm sure she must have read this or knew this. I remember last year I went to her wedding. And as I was there in New York, a friend came and visited me. And he came and, we were talking. My sister comes up and said, "Hey, Tucker, how you doing?" And he was like, "Who are you?" My sister met him over a year and a half before once. And she remembered what he was wearing, who he was with, what he was talking about. And he was just like, "Where's your sister from?" I'm like, "Listen, I've had to live with that. So anytime I got in trouble, you know why, right?" But my sister has that memory. So I have an exercise here. I need a volunteer. Can I get a volunteer? All right, come on. Priya, sorry. All right, Priya, you have a good memory? Do you have a good memory? Not particularly? Okay. All right, Priya. If you can remember what's on the next screen, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. And if you can remember what's on the next screen, you can get the mamba. Everyone say, let's say, the mamba. Are you ready to play for the mamba? All right. So you have 10 seconds. No one help. All right. So we want to see if she can remember all 10 of the these words. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Set, go.
Pencil, ink, notebook, tennis, blank, and work.
She was only able to remember 4? Can I get another volunteer? That was a good try, but can I get another volunteer? All right, Max, come on. I mean, not Max. Abel, why did I do that? See, I'm forgetting. All right, Abel. All right, so you ready to play for the Mamba? You sure? All right, so what I want you to do now, we've done something a little bit different to the list. Here's the clues. Hopefully. So what we've done, look, what I'm telling you right now, look at the top. The words are grouped together in a way that you should be able to remember, but look at the top. It will help you to recall the information. And then there's also a mnemonics or acronym, right? So if you can remember the acronym, it's going to help you to remember the words. Does that make sense? So on the screen, you're going to see acronyms, and you're going to see that the items are grouped by a certain characteristic, all right? So use that, and it will help you remember. Are we ready? 3, 2, I believe in you. Same 10 seconds. 1, go. Okay, can you remember all 10? Wait. Let's see. You can turn around. You're playing for the Mamba. You can do it.
Ink.
Yes, 2. Did anyone get all 10?
Oh, it didn't me.
Chloe, let's see. Come forward. Come, stay. Come on, Chloe. Let's see if you remember. Let's see if you picked up on it.
Basketball.
Uh-huh.
Pen.
It would be so much easier if you go with the acronyms. Yes. Notebook, uh-huh. Did anyone, all right, Chris, come on. Last go for the Mamba. Let's see if you remember.
Okay, so pencil, ink.
Okay, there we go. Listen to what my brother is saying. Say it louder.
Pen is pencil, ink, notebook. That is baseball, aquatics, and tennis.
Yes, but the first one was baseball.
Oh wait, no, basketball.
Uh-huh. And what's the other?
rest is radio.
Uh-huh.
Engine, seat.
What this is a part of.
Did someone just say table?
No. Someone said it though.
They said it.
And trunk, here you go. Shear and shear. All right. So what you saw there, right? Some of the things in the same amount of time, what you can look at are these. Well, I'm not using this. What you can look at are these acronyms, and if you look at the grouping, they call it clumping, right? So these are all school items. So school items, pen or pin, right? And you can go through this different exercises, right? But here you can see that these different activities we can employ different strategies in order to remember. You know, 2 movies that I love. 2 movies that I love that talks about forgetting stuff. One is The Notebook. There was some like salty discharge coming out my eyes. We won't call it tears, but it could be. But then there was also 50 First Dates. Anyone ever seen that movie? Well, hopefully no kids, probably. You're not ready yet. But it's one of those movies, right? 50 First Dates. If you haven't seen this movie, it's built on the premise that this young man, His name is Henry. He meets this fine, attractive young lady whose name is Lucy. Right? Now, Lucy, the problem is, Lucy has anterograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia. In other words, she cannot remember her recent past. See, she got in a car accident, and when she got in the car accident, all she remembers is everything up to the point of that accident. Nothing else. So he comes in one day to this cafeteria, and he sees her sitting down playing with this pancake house and stuff like that. He goes over to her, and they start hitting it off, and she's like, "Oh man, it's nice meeting you." And then she says, "Will I see you tomorrow?" And he goes up to her. He's like, "Yeah, you're going to see me tomorrow." So he goes and he sees her, or goes to see her the next day. He goes up to her table and is like, "Hey, Lucy, how you doing?" She's like, "Hi, do I know you?" He's like, "Lucy, it's me. We met yesterday." She's like, "I don't know you." See, I marvel at this movie because I see so much in it. See, can you imagine trying to connect with someone, hear me this morning, who wakes up every morning only to forget you? Imagine someone wakes up every morning, you're lying in bed the night before you knew him, but the next morning they can't remember who you are. Or imagine caring for someone who does not care for you. See, you remember every moment, you remember every detail, you remember every joy, you remember every pain, but they have no memory whatsoever. There's no recollection, and it takes a certain type of love and patience to have to deal with that. And so in this movie, we see that Henry is committed. He is convicted that this woman is the woman of his dreams. And so you know what he would do? He would go on 50 first dates. Every day was a new chance to date her, and every day that they would have this amazing date, she would forget. But you know what he did in order for her to remember? Everyone know to see the movie. What did he do? Okay. He created a video. He created a video. This was a way for her to connect with him. And so what he did was he recorded the video and he was like, "Hi, you may not know me, but here we are. Here's your dad, here's your brother. We are actually dating." And he's bringing back to memory everything that happens. This daily video, it's through these videos that she became aware of who Henry was. Well, I want to tell you this morning that we have someone who loves us, someone who has created a video for us to remember our past, for us to remember our relationship with him. See, that video has 66 chapters. Some of you may not remember it because it's a little bit dusty. But those 66 chapters is full of stories, poetry, drama, and prophecies. It's called the Bible. See, we have a God who is intent on helping us remember. Remember our relationship with him. We have a God who remembers us and cares for us. See, in our story today, it's going to be short, but in our story today, we're learning about the children of Israel, and we're seeing that they suffer from a disease. So we've been journeying through the book of Joshua, right? And what we see that the children of Israel journey from a disease which affect the memory. You know, they would forget things as recent as yesterday, like Lucy. And so, I wonder, does that sound like anyone we know? See, what we see is that they forgot how God moved for them. And so we find ourselves in Joshua chapter 3 and 4. If you have your Bibles, you can follow along, but I'll have some text on the board for you, on the screen for you. But we find ourselves in Joshua chapter 3 and 4. And just to recap, because I know we struggle or or suffer from forgetfulness, we've been on a series for this whole year. Our theme is all in, right? All in. So first Sabbath, we talked about I'm going all in. And we realized and we learned that to go all in, it requires three things. It requires us to be courageous. It requires us to be compliant. It requires us to be contemplative. Right? These are the things that God admonishes to Joshua as he's about to go into the promised land. And God lets him know that if you go all in, the risk is going to be worth the reward. But then we jumped into Joshua chapter 2 and we learned about the story of Rahab. Now Rahab, we learned, was a lifeline. Not only to her family, the Gentiles, but she was also a lifeline to the world, to the Jews and to the world, right? And we learned, though, that to be a lifeline, you must possess a safe signal. People need to look at you and know that you can be trusted. But you need to also possess a safe shelter. You need to have that place that people could come into and feel safe. But we also learned that you need to have a safe space. If someone shares something with you, you should not go around spreading the gossip. You need to know how to keep it to yourself, because otherwise you risk the chance of being someone's lifeline. And so now we find ourselves in Joshua chapter 3 and 4. And the children of Israel are now on the cusp of entering the city of Jericho. Now, on the screen, you can see the map of Jericho to the south. To the south of here, you have Egypt, right? So they march through the wilderness, and they're coming up into the land of Jericho. But they are stuck because what is in front of them? Does anyone know what body of water is in front of them? No, you can see it. It's right here. This line, blue line, the Jordan River. So they are marching, and they come up to the Jordan River at the time of harvest, the Bible tells us in Joshua chapter 3. Now, in the time of harvest, what we do know is that the waters run very heavy. So much so that they overflow the banks. And so God says, hey, you know what, Joshua? I'm going to do something that I've done before. And I'm going to do this so that people will know that the same God that was with Moses is also with you. And so he says, you know what, Joshua, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to part a sea, and I want you to give these specific instructions and follow them. And so Joshua goes up to the priests, and he tells them that they need to carry first the Ark of the Covenant. And as they're carrying, as they reach the banks of the ocean, the river, as they reach the banks, the Bible lets us know that as soon as the sole of their feet touches the water splits in half. And now they're able to go through. Imagine that. How awesome is that? And this is not the first time. But what did God tell them to do? Because he knew they would forget. He knew that they would have a problem remembering. Or even if they didn't have a problem remembering, guess what we do? We don't share our stories. We don't tell others what God has done for us. So even if you don't forget, you won't even remember to share. So God says, you know what I need you to do? When you're coming out the river this time, because the first time they didn't come out with anything, but when you're coming out this time, I want you to take 12 stones and build for me a memorial. And so a leader from every tribe takes a stone and puts it on their shoulder, and they bring it out from the midst of the Jordan River, and they place it on the bank, and they build a memorial, a pillar for the Lord. See, they construct a sign so that and God says, when people see the stones, you should tell your children and their children and every generation after that this is what God did and how he led the children of Israel to cross the Jordan River. God says you may not remember, but when they see the stones, this should trigger something in your mind to let you know, to let you recall what God has done. And so God tells them to create memorial. To create a memorial. See, something that will allow us to remember our God. Something that will allow us to remember one of our 51st dates with God. He says, create a memorial. You see, too often God has done something for us. He's parted waters for us. He's parted seas for us. He's parted obstacles for us. But we have forgotten. Do you remember that date with God? Do you remember your date with God? Do you remember that exam or that board that you were studying for and stressing about? And you say, God, I need you to help me. And he delivered you. Do you remember that surgery that you had to walk into? Full of fear. But then God gave you a spirit of strength and courage. Do you remember even that boss or that church member or that person who just got on your last nerves? But God gave you the patience and the heart to accept them for who they are. Do you remember that bill you may have had to pay, but when you looked in your bank account, it was like a negative balance? You're like, how is this going to work? Do you remember your first date with God? Do you remember what he brought you through? See, I said it before and I'll say it again. Forgetfulness hurts. Forgetfulness hurts. And so God says, resurrect a sign, resurrect a memorial so that we can remember the mercies of God. Why? Because as human beings, we suffer from a disease. We suffer from a disease that causes us to forget. We suffer from the disease called sin. See, sin allows us to have amnesia. Sin has caused us to forget our relationship with God. Sin has allowed us, as Pastor Nero was talking about, to forget our identity. So what is our identity? The Bible makes it very clear. Exodus 4 verse 22, God says, Israel, you are my firstborn son. You and I are children of the Most High God. I mean, Paul puts it this way in Galatians 4:4-7. He says, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. Therefore, you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then you are also an heir to God. What a love. See, while in the relationship, we may have amnesia and we may forget. God remembers who we are. And because God remembers, there is hope that one day we will also remember our identity. See, God has a love that defies death, a love that defies rejection, the daily rejection where we wake up every morning and we forget who he is. God has a love that keeps chasing after us despite the fact that we forget who he is. See, God remembers us. He remembers when we were perfect, before we were marred. He remembers us the way he created us. And he desires for us to go back to that point. See, one of the things that this memorial stone did, or two things that this memorial stone did, there was a purpose. It tells us in Joshua 4:24. Let's read it together. That all the people of the earth may know the hand of God, that it is mighty, and that you may fear the Lord your God forever. See, Memorial Stone accomplishes two things. It lets us know the power and the might of God, because nothing is impossible for God. See, when you look at that stone, you remember that he did something that was unthinkable. Imagine someone saying, hey man, God caused the waters to rise up like walls, and we were able to walk through. People are like, nah, that didn't happen. But then you can say, hey, look at these stones. We got it from the riverbank. See, it allows us to see the might of God, but it also allows us to fear God. See, this is important because when you look through the Bible, and there's many instances of this phrase, the fear of the Lord. But what do we see the fear of the Lord being? The fear of the Lord, beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord, beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. The fear of the Lord prolongs life. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. It turns away from evil. It leads to life. The fear of the Lord is a reward that brings riches, honor, and life. God wants us to resurrect Memorial Stone so we can know His power and so that we can have the wisdom to choose life. We have a reward like the Mambas waiting for us. But we need to remember God in order to choose life. See, when we can remember this, we can remember our identity. We can remember who and whose we are. Boys and girls, young and old, we must remember our identity in God. So I'm urging you today to resurrect, to build up those memorial stones in your life. When God brings you through, resurrect that memorial stone. You know, we talk about memory. This past week, something tragic happened. Something very tragic happened as we close. But, you know, this past week, I remember I woke up Sunday morning, I was just like, man. I was in a family chat. Someone says, hey, Kobe passed away. And I was like, no. I was like, no, they must be joking. This cannot be real. Because the night before, LeBron has just done something by passing his all-time third on the all-time list. And here it was, you know, the next morning I'm here, like, no. And then LeBron does this thing where he says, man, I've been following Kobe. I remember when I was a young basketball player, he gave me his shoes, and I played. I was like, I admired Kobe. And then everybody on internet, on social media, everybody was putting up some posts. Everybody was sharing their memories of Kobe. And I was like, man, this thing got to be true. I told my wife, I need some comfort food. Because I was struggling with this. I'm not a Kobe fan, but instead I love basketball when it's played well. And so here it is that I'm hearing this story that Kobe has passed. And then people start sharing different memories of Kobe. And I remember people were talking about, you know, his fame in basketball and the 81 points that he dropped and how he dunked over different people and the 3 back-to-back titles and his infamous duo with Shaquille O'Neal. People were remembering Kobe. And I was like, man, this thing cannot be real. But then one lady put on there, you know, a lot of people remember Kobe for the fact that he was a great basketball player. But I remember Kobe because he was a girl dad. He was an awesome father. He loved his kids. That's how she talked about the fact that when she was pregnant, Kobe was coming out the what do you call those things in the stadium? The tunnel, thank you. Coming out the tunnel. And she sees him, and he sees her, and he's like, hey, you're pregnant, what are you going to have? And she's like, oh, I'm going to have a girl. And she's like, oh, you're going to have a girl? I got 3 girls, man, that's awesome. I wish I could have like 10 more girls. I think it's like 5 more. He's like, I love being a dad of a girl. I'm a girl dad. And then everybody started posting. And then some of the people talked about the fact that Kobe had the Mamba mentality. See, he would not settle for less. See, when you have the Mamba mentality, you're focused on consistency and persistence. When you have the mentality, you're striving always for excellence. Kobe was recalling, or someone told him that he wouldn't be anything, or you won't amount to anything. And he said he used that as fuel to strive for excellence. And so when people were sleeping, Kobe said, I was in the gym putting up shots. He had a desire to be the best that he could be. He had a desire for greatness. And why did he have this desire for greatness? Kobe, you check a few interviews, you will see where he talks about knowing God. He's like, when in the early 2000s when there was a scandal, he's like, it was God who was great. It was God who brought me through that mess. I couldn't take that thing on my own, but God did it. Go look at the interviews with Stephen A. He talks about the fact that he is who he is because God made him great. Kobe realized his identity in God. It's God who remembers us, that allows us to remember our greatness. We're destined for greatness. And so there was other interviews where Kobe was asked a question about death, and he's like, I don't worry about death. Even the morning before he died, Kobe was seeing his priests because he realized it's all about God. God wants us to remember our identity. See, Kobe Mamba mentality allowed him to go all in. He was all in with his family. He was all in basketball. He was all in whatever he did in life. And when he looked at his little daughter, Gianna, who passed, he's like, this girl, she got it. She got the fire. And as I watched and I heard, I said, God, you made me great. And I'm going to live to be great. She was only 13 and she was already destined for greatness. He said she was going to go to the University of UConn. And you know what UConn did? They retired her jersey even though she had not even been there. When you're destined, when you know that you're great, you can go all in and be the best that you can be. And God has called every one of us to be great. It's not just Kobe. So the call this morning is, are you going to remember your God so you can remember your identity? You're called. We are called to be great. May God help us all to have the mentality